steam rising. The sight stopped traffic on Sheikh Zayed Road as the Tiffany blue Lamborghini Huracan sat disabled in the middle lane, its hood raised and white vapor pouring from the engine compartment, hazard lights flashing uselessly as luxury vehicles maneuvered around the stalled supercar during Dubai's afternoon rush hour. Sheikh Mansour al-Zahrani stood beside his $300,000 exotic car in his pristine white Kandura and traditional Gutra, his face flushed with fury and embarrassment as dozens of drivers slowed to stare at the breakdown, some filming on their phones as they passed the spectacle of a Lamborghini failing so publicly. His own phone was pressed to his ear as he screamed at someone about sending help immediately, about how unacceptable this was, about how a car this expensive shouldn't break down ever. Approaching from the shoulder where he had pulled over after seeing the disabled vehicle was Terrence Hayes, a black mechanic in professional work uniform with a mobile toolkit slung over his shoulder, his face showing the calm assessment of someone who had seen countless breakdowns and knew exactly how to read an engine's symptoms. But there was something in Terrence's expression as he got closer to the Lamborghini, as he glanced at the engine, and then at the furious Sheikh, something knowing and calculated that suggested he understood more about this breakdown than just its mechanical cause. Sheikh Mansour barely acknowledged Terrence's approach, too focused on his phone call and his public humiliation to pay attention to a mechanic who appeared to be just another service worker stopping to offer roadside assistance. Through the gathering crowd of onlookers filming from stopped cars and sidewalks, through the chaos of diverted traffic and growing congestion, what was about to happen in the next 2 hours would cost Sheikh Mansour far more than the repair bill for his exotic car, would expose secrets about his business dealings that he had assumed were protected by the privacy of his personal vehicle, and would reveal that the mechanic he was about to dismiss as an unqualified stranger, offering unwanted help, was actually someone whose expertise in exotic automotive engineering was sophisticated enough to diagnose not just what had broken, but why it had broken, and whose decision about whether to help or walk away would determine whether Sheikh Mansour's carefully hidden fraud scheme remained hidden or became catastrophically public. Terrence Hayes had been working as a specialized exotic car mechanic in Dubai for 3 years, operating a mobile service that catered to owners of high-end vehicles who needed expert maintenance and repair without the hassle of visiting traditional service centers. He had built a reputation among luxury car enthusiasts as someone who understood the complex engineering of supercars and hypercars, who could diagnose problems that stumped dealer technicians, and who provided discreet professional service that wealthy clients valued. His rates were premium, his skills were exceptional, and his client list included some of the wealthiest people in the Gulf region who trusted him with vehicles worth millions. But Terrence's expertise went deeper than most clients realized. Before moving to Dubai, he had spent 8 years working for Lamborghini's factory service department in Italy, trained directly by the manufacturer on every system and component of their vehicles. He had worked on the Huracan model specifically during its development and early production, understood its engineering intimately, and knew its common failure points and quirks better than almost anyone outside the factory. He had left that position for personal reasons, and had relocated to Dubai, where the concentration of exotic cars created opportunities for independent specialists who could provide factory-level expertise without factory bureaucracy and pricing. Over 3 years of servicing high-end vehicles in Dubai, Terrence had developed an interesting perspective on his wealthy clients. Some treated him with respect, valuing his expertise and building long-term relationships based on mutual professionalism. Others treated him as invisible help, people who fixed things but didn't matter beyond their immediate utility. And a few treated him with active contempt, particularly wealthy Gulf nationals who seemed to view anyone in a service role, especially black service workers, as inferior regardless of their actual expertise or qualifications. Those clients got professional service because Terrence maintained his standards regardless of how he was treated, but they didn't get the extra insights and advice that he freely gave to clients who treated him respectfully. Sheikh Mansour al-Zahrani fell into that third category, though Terrence didn't know that yet. The Sheikh was 44, wealthy from family real estate holdings and his own investment ventures, known in certain circles for aggressive business practices that pushed legal and ethical boundaries. He drove expensive cars as status symbols, treated them carelessly, and expected that money could fix any problem instantly. His Tiffany blue Lamborghini Huracan was a custom order that had cost well over $300,000, and he drove it as a mobile advertisement of his wealth and status. But the Lamborghini had developed a problem that Sheikh Mansour's careless maintenance schedule had allowed to escalate. The cooling system had a slow leak that could have been fixed easily if caught early, but months of ignoring service recommendations had allowed it to worsen until finally, on a hot afternoon with the air conditioning running maximum and the engine under load in stop-and-go traffic, the cooling system had failed completely. The engine had overheated, automatic safeties had shut it down, and now the expensive supercar sat disabled in the middle of one of Dubai's busiest roads, while its owner dealt with the public embarrassment of a breakdown that was entirely preventable. Terence had been driving his service van on the same road, returning from a client appointment, when he saw the disabled Lamborghini. His professional instincts kicked in immediately. A Huracan broken down in traffic was both a potential client opportunity and a chance to help someone in genuine need. Plus, it was always interesting to diagnose problems in vehicles he knew intimately. He pulled onto the shoulder, grabbed his mobile diagnostic kit, and walked toward the steaming supercar to offer assistance. Sheikh Mansour saw him approaching and immediately dismissed him with a contemptuous wave without even pausing his phone conversation. "I don't need help from some random mechanic," the sheikh said in Arabic to whoever he was calling. "Send someone from the dealer immediately." Terence understood enough Arabic from 3 years in Dubai to catch the dismissal, but he continued approaching because a car overheating in traffic was potentially dangerous, and because the steam suggested this needed immediate attention, regardless of the owner's attitude. "Sir, I'm a specialized Lamborghini technician," Terence said professionally. "Your cooling system has failed, and continuing to run the engine could cause permanent damage. I can diagnose the problem and likely get you mobile again within an hour if you'd like assistance." Sheikh Mansour looked at him with barely concealed contempt. "You work for Lamborghini dealer?" he asked in English. Terence shook his head. "I'm independent, but I was factory trained in Italy. I specialize in exactly this model." The sheikh sneered. "I don't let random people touch my car. The dealer is sending someone." "Go away." Terence shrugged. "The dealer is at least 90 minutes away in this traffic, and your engine is at risk of serious damage if the problem isn't addressed soon." "But it's your car." He started to walk away, but something made him pause and look more carefully at the Lamborghini. Something about the failure pattern bothered his diagnostic instincts. Cooling systems didn't usually fail this catastrophically this quickly, unless there was an underlying issue that had been ignored, or unless someone had tampered with the system. He walked back toward the sheikh, who was still on his phone. "May I look at your engine for just a moment?" "No charge. I just want to check something for safety reasons." Sheikh Mansour waved him away irritably but didn't explicitly refuse, too focused on his conversation to care what a mechanic did. Terence approached the open engine compartment and immediately saw what he had suspected. This wasn't just a failure. Someone had deliberately sabotaged this cooling system. What Terence discovered in that 30-second examination was evidence that someone had loosened the cooling system connections and possibly contaminated the coolant, causing accelerated degradation that would lead to exactly this kind of spectacular failure. It was sophisticated enough that casual inspection wouldn't reveal it, but to someone with Terence's factory-level expertise, the signs were obvious. This breakdown wasn't bad luck or poor maintenance. This was deliberate sabotage, designed to cause a breakdown that would strand the vehicle and its owner. Terence straightened up from examining the engine, his mind processing implications. Someone wanted Sheikh Mansour stranded. Someone with access to this car had sabotaged it deliberately. And Terence had to decide whether to share that information with a man who had just dismissed him with contempt, or whether to walk away and let the dealer technicians eventually discover it in 90 minutes when they arrived. But before he could decide, Terence noticed something else. Through the open door of the Lamborghini, he could see the sheikh's briefcase on the passenger seat, and visible through the partially opened briefcase were documents. Financial documents. And Terence, who had excellent vision, could read enough of the visible text to recognize what he was seeing. Investment agreements, bank account numbers, and something that made his pulse quicken. References to offshore accounts and transactions that looked suspiciously like the money laundering patterns he had learned to recognize during compliance training that all legitimate Dubai businesses received. Terence had been in Dubai long enough to know that financial crimes were taken extremely seriously by UAE authorities, that money laundering and fraud were prosecuted aggressively, and that evidence of such crimes should be reported. He had also been in Dubai long enough to know that wealthy individuals sometimes assumed their expensive cars were private spaces where they could discuss or transport sensitive documents without anyone important seeing them, forgetting that mechanics who serviced those vehicles had access to everything inside them. And now Terence faced a decision that went beyond whether to help fix a sabotaged car. He had stumbled onto evidence of what appeared to be financial crimes, visible in plain view in a disabled vehicle on a public road. He had a professional and possibly legal obligation to report that. But he also had no particular desire to help a man who had just treated him with contempt. The collision of these factors created an interesting situation. What Sheikh Mansour didn't know, what he had never bothered to learn in his rush to dismiss the mechanic offering help, was that Terence Hayes wasn't just a skilled technician. He was someone who maintained active relationships with Dubai's exotic car community, including several collectors and enthusiasts who were also senior business figures and law enforcement officials. He was someone who understood that his professional discretion was valuable, but not unlimited, that it didn't extend to covering evidence of crimes he observed while providing service. And he was someone who had been treated poorly enough times by wealthy clients that he had developed very clear principles about when his professional loyalty was owed and when it wasn't. Terence pulled out his phone and made a decision. He took several photos of the sabotaged cooling system components, documenting the evidence of tampering. Then, while Sheikh Mansour remained focused on his phone call and oblivious to what was happening near his car, Terence took photos of the visible documents in the briefcase through the open car door. He wasn't touching anything, wasn't entering the vehicle, just documenting what was visible in plain view from public space. Then he made 2 phone calls that would change Sheikh Mansour's immediate future dramatically. First, he called a contact in Dubai police, who specialized in financial crimes, and who Terence knew from the exotic car community. He explained that he had encountered a breakdown where evidence of money laundering was visible in plain view in the disabled vehicle, and that he thought authorities might want to investigate before the vehicle was removed from public space. The officer asked for his location and said units would be dispatched immediately. Second, he called his most sophisticated diagnostic contact, another independent Lamborghini specialist who had access to factory service bulletins and recall information. He described the sabotage pattern he had found and asked if there had been any similar incidents reported. His colleague confirmed what Terence suspected. There had been several similar sabotage cases recently, all targeting luxury vehicles owned by specific individuals who were later discovered to be under investigation for fraud, as if someone was creating situations where those individuals would be stranded and vulnerable to investigation or exposure. Then Terence did something that surprised even himself. He walked back to Sheikh Mansour, who had finally ended his phone call, and stood fuming beside his disabled car. "Sir, I need to inform you of something important," Terence said formally. "Your cooling system failure wasn't accidental. Someone sabotaged this vehicle deliberately. The failure pattern suggests professional tampering designed to strand you. And I've observed what appear to be sensitive financial documents visible in your vehicle in plain view from public space. I've contacted authorities because I have professional obligations regarding both the sabotage and the potential financial crimes I've observed." Sheikh Mansour's face went through several color changes as he processed what Terence had just said. Rage, confusion, and finally something that looked like fear. "You had no right to look at my documents," he sputtered. "Those are private. I'll have you arrested." Terence remained calm. "They were visible in plain view through your open door from public space. I haven't touched anything or entered your vehicle, but I've documented what I observed and reported it as required. Dubai Police Financial Crimes Unit is on their way. If those documents are legitimate, you have nothing to worry about. If they're not, then you have bigger problems than a broken cooling system." Within 20 minutes, police units arrived. Within an hour, Sheikh Mansour was being questioned about the financial documents, while forensic teams photographed the sabotaged cooling system and examined the Lamborghini for additional evidence. Within 2 hours, his briefcase had been seized, and he was being transported for formal questioning about potential money laundering based on the documents Terence had observed and reported. The investigation that followed revealed that Sheikh Mansour had been operating a sophisticated money laundering scheme, using his real estate business and investment activities to clean money from criminal sources. The documents in his briefcase were evidence of transactions totaling over $200 million in laundered funds over 3 years. And the sabotage of his car had apparently been orchestrated by one of his business partners, who had grown nervous about the scheme and wanted to create a situation where Sheikh Mansour would be exposed and potentially caught, removing him as a liability to the larger criminal network. For Terence, the consequences were complicated. He had done what he believed was legally and ethically required, reporting evidence of crimes he had observed. But he had also made an enemy of what remained of Sheikh Mansour's social network, wealthy individuals who didn't appreciate a mechanic exposing one of their own. Some of his wealthy clients stopped using his services, apparently uncomfortable with a mechanic who would report observations to authorities. But other clients, the ones who valued integrity and who appreciated that Terence's discretion had limits at actual crimes, became more loyal than ever. His business evolved to focus on those clients, building a smaller but more stable clientele of people who respected expertise and ethics. And the exotic car community, particularly the legitimate collectors and enthusiasts who were themselves business and law enforcement professionals, regarded Terence with increased respect. The case became known in Dubai business circles as an example of how assumptions about service workers being invisible could lead to catastrophic exposure. Sheikh Mansour had treated his Lamborghini as a private mobile office, discussing sensitive matters and transporting incriminating documents while assuming that mechanics who serviced the vehicle were too unimportant to understand what they were seeing, or too intimidated to report it. That assumption had been catastrophically wrong when he encountered a mechanic with the expertise to recognize sabotage, the observational skills to notice financial crimes, and the integrity to report both, regardless of the social power differential. For Sheikh Mansour himself, the consequences were severe and permanent. He was convicted of money laundering and sentenced to 12 years in prison with asset forfeiture exceeding $150 million. His business empire collapsed. His reputation was destroyed. And the Tiffany blue Lamborghini that had broken down so publicly was seized as evidence and eventually auctioned, a symbol of how status symbols and assumptions of privacy could both fail spectacularly. Before we wrap this story up, I'd like to thank you for reaching this far. And if you enjoyed this story as much as I think you did, then be sure to show your support by liking and subscribing so this channel can reach more people like you. Now back to the story. Years later, Terence would tell the story to other mechanics as an example of professional ethics and the importance of understanding that discretion about client information had limits. He would note that he had made the decision to report what he observed not out of revenge for being dismissed contemptuously, though that had certainly made the decision easier, but because he had genuine legal and ethical obligations that he took seriously regardless of how clients treated him. And the breakdown on Sheikh Zayed Road became a case study, taught in business ethics courses and law enforcement training, about how criminals often expose themselves through small mistakes and assumptions, how treating service workers as invisible could mean your crimes were being observed and documented by people you never considered important enough to worry about, and how expertise existed in unexpected places, including in the minds of mechanics, who understood not just how machines worked, but also how to recognize when something about a situation wasn't right, and required action beyond just fixing what was broken.